Moscow, a city shrouded in history and beauty, but beneath its magnificent facade, a nightmare unfolded. In the serene Bitsevsky Park, a killer stalked the innocent. They called him the Chessboard Killer. His name was Alexander Pichushkin. His motive was as cold and calculated as a game of chess. With each victim he aimed to fill a square on a chessboard, a macabre scorecard of death. Pichushkin's reign of terror left Moscow gripped by fear. Who would be next? Bitsevsky Park, a sprawling woodland in the heart of Moscow. A place of peace, a sanctuary from the city's bustle. But in its shadowy depths, evil lurked. Pichushkin knew the park intimately. He used its isolation to his advantage, luring his victims into the woods, promising companionship or a shared drink. But his intentions were far more sinister. The unsuspecting victims, often elderly or homeless, had no idea they were walking into a death trap, a place where the shadows whispered of unspeakable horrors. Alexander Pichushkin, a name synonymous with evil. But what turned him into a monster? His childhood offered glimpses into the darkness that would consume him. A head injury at a young age, a troubled upbringing, a fascination with death. The seeds of violence were sown early. Pichushkin's descent into madness was gradual, fueled by a growing sense of powerlessness and a desire for control. He found solace in the act of killing. Each life he took a twisted affirmation of his own existence. Pichushkin's killing spree began in the late 1990s. His early victims, often acquaintances or people he encountered in the park, were brutally murdered, their bodies dumped in secluded areas. A pattern emerged. Most victims were killed with blunt force trauma to the head. Some were thrown into sewage drains, left to decompose in the darkness. With each kill, Pichushkin marked a square on his chessboard, a gruesome tally of his murderous rampage. He vowed to fill all 64 squares. Section 5. Patterns of Death. As Pichushkin's body count grew, so did the fear in Moscow. Rumors of a serial killer spread like wildfire. The police were under immense pressure to catch the culprit. Investigators noticed similarities in the murders, the location, the victims, the brutality of the killings. They knew they were dealing with a serial killer, but his identity remained elusive. The media dubbed him the Chessboard Killer, a chilling moniker that reflected the calculated nature of his crimes. The city held its breath, waiting for the next move in his deadly game. Section 6. The Hunter's Confession. This is the story of Alexander Pichushkin, a man whose name would become synonymous with terror in Moscow. Known as the Chessboard Killer, Pichushkin's reign of horror spanned over a decade, leaving a trail of fear and death in his wake. In 2006, a breakthrough. The city had been gripped by fear, with the police struggling to piece together the puzzle of the mysterious murders. The breakthrough came when Pichushkin made a fatal mistake. He killed a woman he knew, Marina Moskolyova. This was not just another random victim. Marina was someone who had been close to him. He killed a woman he knew, Marina Moskolyova. Marina had been a colleague, and her disappearance did not go unnoticed. Her son, worried about his mother, began to search for clues. He had confided in her about the murders, even showing her his macabre chessboard. This chessboard was no ordinary game. It was a chilling record of his victims, each square representing a life he had taken. After Moskolyova's disappearance, her son found a note with Pichushkin's name on it. This note was the key that unlocked the mystery, leading the police straight to Pichushkin. The police finally had their suspect. With the evidence mounting, they knew they were on the verge of capturing one of the most notorious killers in Russian history. Pichushkin was arrested and brought in for questioning. The interrogation room was filled with a tense silence as detectives prepared to confront the man who had eluded them for so long. He confessed to the murders, his chilling words sending shockwaves through Russia. His confession was not just an admission of guilt, it was a detailed account of his gruesome acts, each word more horrifying than the last. He spoke of his killings with a detached calmness, his lack of remorse sending chills down the spines of seasoned investigators. Pichushkin's cold demeanor and the sheer number of his victims left an indelible mark on all who heard his confession. The Chessboard Killer had finally been unmasked, but the scars of his actions would linger in the hearts of many for years to come. Section 7. Captured. The news of Pichushkin's arrest sent a collective sigh of relief through Moscow. The nightmare was over. For years the city had been gripped by fear, with each new report of a victim sending waves of panic through the community. Parents held their children closer, and the streets emptied earlier each night. The arrest marked the end of a dark chapter in Moscow's history, but the healing process was only beginning. But the scars of his crimes ran deep. Families of the victims were left to pick up the pieces, haunted by the memories of their lost loved ones. The city itself bore the psychological wounds of Pichushkin's reign of terror. Memorials sprang up in parks and street corners, marking the spots where lives had been brutally taken. The community came together in vigils and support groups, trying to find solace in shared grief. His trial was a media sensation. Journalists from around the world descended on Moscow, eager to cover the proceedings. The courtroom was packed with reporters, and every detail of the trial was broadcast to a captivated audience. The public's fascination with Pichushkin's case was fueled by the sheer brutality of his crimes and the chilling persona he presented. The world watched in horror as the details of his crimes were revealed. His chilling confessions, his lack of remorse, and his twisted justification for the murders shocked and appalled the nation. Pichushkin claimed he was completing a chessboard of death, aiming to kill 64 people to match the number of squares on a chessboard. This macabre goal only added to the public's revulsion and fascination, and his twisted justification for the murders shocked and appalled the nation. The courtroom was filled with gasps and murmurs as the prosecution laid out the gruesome details of each murder. The evidence was overwhelming, and the emotional testimonies from the victims' families brought many to tears. The prosecutor's presentation was methodical and relentless, leaving no doubt about Pichushkin's guilt. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Pichushkin, including DNA evidence, eyewitness testimony, and his own confessions. Each piece of evidence painted a clearer picture of a man driven by a dark and twisted compulsion. The DNA evidence linked him directly to several crime scenes, while eyewitnesses recounted chilling encounters with the killer. Pichushkin's own confessions, delivered with a disturbing calmness, sealed his fate. His defense team attempted to portray him as insane, arguing that no sane person could commit such heinous acts. They brought in psychiatric experts to testify about Pichushkin's mental state, hoping to convince the jury that he was not fully responsible for his actions. However, the prosecution countered with their own experts, who argued that Pichushkin was fully aware of his actions and their consequences. But the jury was unconvinced. After days of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict. The judge sentenced Pichushkin to life in prison, ensuring that he would never again walk the streets of Moscow. As he was led away in handcuffs, the city breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that justice had been served. The trial may have ended, but the impact of Pichushkin's crimes would be felt for years to come. Section 8. Inside the Mind of a Monster. Psychiatrists and criminal profilers have long debated what drove Pichushkin to kill. Some point to his childhood trauma, others to his personality disorders. His obsession with the chessboard, with each murder representing a captured piece, suggested a desire for power and control. He saw himself as a master strategist, playing a deadly game with human lives. Pichushkin's case remains a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity, a stark illustration of how a disturbed mind can transform into a killing machine. Section 9. Legacy of Terror. Alexander Pichushkin, infamously known as the Chessboard Killer, was found guilty of 49 murders and 3 attempted murders. His trial was a grim spectacle, a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity. The courtroom was filled with an air of somber reflection as the gavel slammed down, sealing his fate. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he remains to this day. The dimly lit prison cell, with its cold, unyielding bars, became his new home. The exterior of the prison, ominous and foreboding, stands as a stark contrast to the freedom he once had. His crimes left an indelible mark on Moscow. The city, with its rich history and vibrant culture, now carries the heavy burden of his legacy. The streets, once bustling with life, now have an air of somber reflection. Memorial sites have sprung up, where people come to pay their respects and remember the victims. Vitsevsky Park, once a place of tranquility, became a chilling reminder of the city's brush with evil. The park, now deserted and eerie, is shrouded in an ominous tone. Shadows stretch long into the night, a stark reminder of the darkness that once lurked there. The Chessboard Killer's reign of terror may be over, but the scars he left behind are still fresh. Old news footage of his crimes continues to haunt the public consciousness. The dark, empty chessboard, a symbol of his twisted game, remains a haunting image. The cityscape, once vibrant, now carries an air of foreboding. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives. The close-up of worried faces, people nervously looking over their shoulders, and the dark alleyways all paint a picture of a city still grappling with fear. The ordinary has become extraordinary in its potential for hidden terror. And the importance of remaining vigilant against the monsters that walk among us. The shadowy figures that move in the night, the act of locking doors and windows, and the neighborhood watch signs, all serve as reminders of the need for constant vigilance. In a world where evil can hide in plain sight, awareness and caution are our best defenses.